It's where the leadership in this country is, and it's where the energy, the action, the urgency are found on any important issue that I can think of. The most important ones: climate, the fact that we've got a little more than 10 years within which to act to avert a catastrophe that I think is going to be hard for us to even imagine right now. As bad as things are right now, given what just happened along the Missouri River, given what's happened in my home state of Texas with floods and droughts, fires in California, it's very often the youngest members of our community who bring the most urgency to this issue and will force the action required to make sure that we overcome this challenge. Gun violence, more than 30,000 of our fellow Americans killed every year. No other country approaches this level of carnage. And it is the students who literally led the walkouts in high schools, who organized the marches for our lives all over this country, that produced some of the change that we're beginning to see. The House of Representatives just passed within the last 5 weeks universal background checks, which is something that we had made no progress on for years. I attribute that to the leadership of young people. Healthcare becoming a dominant defining issue right now in our politics. Healthcare for everybody, regardless of circumstances or fortune or fate, making sure you can see a doctor or afford your prescriptions, young people. And I really think about the history of this country, and at any moment of significant change, it's very often been young people leading the charge, risking their lives, losing their lives. 17, 18, 19-year-olds in World War II, 17, 18, 19-year-olds in the freedom rides in the South and civil rights marches, and crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. And it's young people right now forcing the conversation that we need to have. So I'm going where the leadership is in this country right now, and that's what's brought us to Iowa today.
Gotcha. And so you talked a little bit about climate solutions. What's your plan of action if you were to become president?
Day one, join the rest of the world. We've become the one country that has accepted itself from its obligation to the next generation by exiting the Paris Climate Agreement. Rejoin that day one. Reinstitute the Clean Power Plan, implemented by President Obama, withdrawn by President Trump. Ensure that we're generating more of our power from renewable energy, polluting less of our air and our water and our soil, adding fewer greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, slowing the warming of this planet. Partner with rural America. Those farmers want to be incentivized to plant cover crops, for example, but there's no profit to be found in that, and they're already underwater when it comes to debt, and then literally in some parts of Nebraska and Iowa right now. Open up technologies like precision tilling and precision farming that leave more of the carbon in the soil undisturbed. And then make sure that we make a very bold transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy, to wind, where you're a leader, to wind, where Texas is a leader, to solar, where my hometown of El Paso is increasingly becoming a leader, and then reassert our leadership globally, because China has 3 to 4 times the number of coal-fired plants than we do. Even if we stopped emitting another ounce of greenhouse gas today, it would still be insufficient for the global needs to keep this planet from warming another degree Celsius. And so we've got to bring the rest of the world around the table and produce the consensus that will lead to the action that will save the generations that follow ours.
Do you support the Green New Deal?
I really like the Green New Deal, both in its clarity about the challenge that we face, the targets of by 2030 or as humanly close to 2030 as possible, having net zero greenhouse emissions, meaning that there may be some greenhouse gas emissions, but they are more than made up for by what we are pulling out of the atmosphere, either through cover crops or new technologies that could be innovated here in the United States of America. I also like the analogy that they draw to the last time that this country faced a true existential threat in World War II, coming out of the Great Depression, Nazi Germany, which was an existential threat to the Western democracies. The United States led the charge, won that war, made the world safe for democracy, and also pulled millions out of poverty following the Great Depression into the middle class. There's an opportunity present, not unlike that one, only much larger in scope and scale and severity and consequence if we fail to live up to this moment. So, no, I'm really grateful. And again, another example of young people leading on a critically important issue.
So you do support it?
I do. As you know, many of the details are yet defined in the Green New Deal. I want to make sure that any label or any phrase does not prevent us from bringing in those who may belong to a different political party, may live in a different part of the country than where the Green New Deal is popular. So I want to make sure that we are singularly focused on the goal of saving this planet from ourselves. And so whatever we call it, by whatever means that we achieve it, we must make sure that we do not warm another degree Celsius.
Gotcha. And I was curious if you knew about the Draft Beto event, that Draft Beto movement that was in Iowa and some early primary states. That was before you had announced, there were people holding events here, talking to people about your campaign, raising money for you. I was curious if you knew about that and if you were planning on accepting the money that they had raised.
I am aware that there were people organizing before Amy and I had made a decision. I wasn't aware that they were raising money, so I don't know that I've got an answer for you in terms of accepting those funds. What's really important to me at a time that so many of our institutions and government have become captured and corrupted by special interests and PACs and corporations and a lack of transparency in our democracy is that we only accept contributions from human beings, no PACs, no corporations, and we also restrict lobbyists from participating in this election, at least as far as we are concerned. So there's a very high threshold over which any contribution must pass before we accept it. So I will talk to my team, and if there is an offer to support us through funds raised before I was a candidate, find out what that would entail.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you're going to a lot of college campuses, obviously, because, like you said, the youth energy is there. And I was curious what your plan was to address rising student debt, which is an important issue.
Absolutely. For the country, if you have $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt, which is more than all the credit card debt combined, not only is it a drag on that holder of student debt, not only a drag on the former student who's paying it back, especially when you have close to a 10% default rate right now in this country. But it's a drag on our entire economy. We're not getting the best out of people when they're saddled with tens or in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, which far too often they cannot pay back. So I think the first part of the solution is to ensure that we're not digging the hole any deeper. A proposal for free community college makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. Partnering with local public school districts and high schools so that some students can even graduate at 18 with not just a high school diploma, but with an associate's degree, with a skill or a trade or a discipline that is marketable, that allows them to command a living wage, and is there for those 18 and 19-year-olds who do not want to go to college for whatever reason. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that's part of the dynamic. And then for those who want to pursue higher education, making sure that in addition to free community college, you have debt-free 4-year public universities for those who want to improve themselves by going to school for 4 years and earning a bachelor's. I also want to make sure that we prioritize unions again, strengthen their power instead of continuing to diminish it. The apprenticeships that they offer are also debt-free, are also an educational and learning experience, and also connect people in this country, whether they're 18 years old or 48 years old, with jobs that are available, that are high wage, high value, high skill, but do not have a trained workforce to perform them today. And then the second part of this is if you're holding some of that student loan debt, on average when you graduate today from college, you have about $40,000 on your back. Let's ensure that if you're willing to perform public service, that we forgive some or all of that debt. If you want to take care of veterans at the VA at a time that we have 45,000 plus positions unfilled at the VA, let's reward that commitment to public service by wiping clean your debt. If you want to teach school or become a public school educator, I think that has tremendous public and national value. And so let's wipe clean some or all of your debt for doing that. And then at a minimum, let's refinance existing debt that you have so it's a little bit more manageable and so that you can focus on your career, on whatever you're supposed to do in your life, and on your family, and on bettering yourself. So those are some steps that I would like us to take as a country.
Gotcha. And so you've had a lot of events in the past week. How are you holding up?
Holding up well. So we this latest trip, we hit the road a week ago Saturday. So this is our 8th day on the road. At the end of this, I'm back in El Paso and get to be with Amy and then our kids, Ulysses, who's 12, Molly, who's 10, and Henry, who is 8. And so I'm really excited to see them, and I get to be home for a few days. But we have been propelled by the energy and the enthusiasm and also the intensity of the democratic process in Iowa. Iowans take this incredibly seriously. They understand that they're vetting me and other candidates, not just for Iowa, but for functionally the rest of the country. And I'm really encouraged and inspired by that, because I think there's an open question forming about the viability of our democracy today, given how corrupted and captured it is, given how many people feel shut out of an ability to influence the direction of their government. I don't see that in Iowa. I see a real enthusiasm, and even if it's not for me, even if it's for another candidate, or even if it's going to be only the 3rd or 4th visit after which someone's going to make up their mind, I think that's great. I think it's really healthy for our democracy. So I feel good. Folks have been kind and warm and welcoming. They've made us feel at home, and so I'm grateful for the chance to be here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, appreciate it.